Let me tell you something most people don't realize until it's too late. Strength isn't loud. It isn't about who talks the toughest, who lifts the heaviest, or who wins the most arguments. Real strength is quiet, unshaken, and deeply rooted in who you are, not in how others see you. See, the world has a strange way of defining strength. It glorifies confidence but confuses it with arrogance. It praises resilience but often mistakes it for never showing emotions. But true strength? It's far more subtle. It's the kind of power that doesn't need to announce itself. It's there in the way you handle challenges, in the way you treat others, and in the way you stay grounded even when life throws its worst at you. Before we get further, I'd love to know where you're joining us from. And if anything in this video resonates with you, a like and subscribe would mean a lot. It lets me know that these kinds of conversations matter to you as much as they do to me. Now, let's talk about these subtle signs, because the strongest people don't always look the way you'd expect. They aren't the ones who shout the loudest, and they aren't the ones trying to prove something to the world. But if you recognize these signs in yourself, then you're far stronger than you give yourself credit for. First, you're not afraid to walk away when something no longer serves you. Now, that may not seem like strength at first, but think about it. Most people cling to things far longer than they should. They stay in jobs that drain them. They hold on to friendships that are long past their expiration date. They fear letting go because the unknown feels scarier than the suffering they already know. But true strength is in recognizing when something isn't right for you and having the courage to leave, even when it's hard. You don't wait for things to fall apart completely before making a change. You trust yourself enough to know that letting go isn't giving up, it's making space for something better. And here's the thing. People might not always understand when you walk away. They may question your decisions, call you selfish, or even try to guilt you into staying. But strong people don't live for the approval of others. You don't need permission to protect your own peace. You simply know that your well-being isn't up for debate. That's strength. Now, here's another subtle sign most people overlook. You don't waste time trying to prove yourself. Have you ever noticed that the loudest people in the room are usually the most insecure? They boast, they over-explain, they make sure everyone knows just how smart, successful, or important they are. But truly strong people, they don't need to do all that. They don't need constant validation because they already know who they are. You don't feel the need to argue with people just to be right. You don't waste energy convincing others to see your worth. You let your actions speak for you. And that kind of quiet confidence, that's rare. That's real strength. Think about it. When was the last time you saw someone truly secure in themselves needing to announce it to the world? They don't, because they don't need to. Their presence alone carries a kind of weight that others respect, even if they can't quite put their finger on why. And here's something else. When you're truly strong, you don't let people's opinions shake you. You're not immune to criticism, of course you're human, but you don't let it define you. You don't let every little comment get under your skin because you know who you are. You've made peace with the fact that not everyone will like you, and that's okay. You're not here to please everyone. You're here to be true to yourself. This kind of strength is something that develops over time. It comes from experience. From learning the hard way that no matter what you do, some people will misunderstand you, judge you, or try to tear you down. But when you reach a place where their words lose power over you, that's when you know you've grown into a different kind of strength, the kind that can't be taken away. We've covered two subtle but powerful signs of strength so far: the ability to walk away when something no longer serves you, and the quiet confidence of not needing to prove yourself. But there are more. 6 more, to be exact. And the next one? It's one of the hardest things to master, but also one of the clearest signs of inner strength. There is a kind of strength that doesn't get talked about enough. It's not about how much you can endure before breaking. It's about how you put yourself back together when life tears you apart. And here's the truth. Everyone breaks at some point. No matter how strong you think you are, there will be days when life knocks you to your knees. You'll lose people you thought would always be there. You'll face disappointments you never saw coming. And in those moments, real strength isn't about pretending you're okay. It's about choosing to keep going, even when you're not. That brings us to the third sign of true strength. You don't let hardships define you. Strong people feel pain just like anyone else, but they don't let it turn them bitter. They don't get stuck in a victim mindset. They don't let life's unfair moments steal their peace. Instead, they take what happens to them and use it. They learn from it, they grow. Now, that doesn't mean they don't struggle. They do. The difference is they refuse to stay down. Have you ever noticed how some people go through one bad experience and it changes them forever? They close off. They stop trusting. They carry that wound into every new relationship, every new experience. But strong people, they find a way to heal without losing themselves in the process. They accept that pain is part of life, but suffering doesn't have to be. This kind of strength isn't always visible. In fact, it's usually quiet. It's in the person who keeps showing up even when they feel like giving up. It's in the one who's been hurt but still chooses to love, who's been disappointed but still believes in the goodness of people. That's not weakness, that's power. And then there's the fourth sign, one of the rarest but most valuable strengths a person can have, the ability to control your emotions. Now, let's get one thing straight. Controlling your emotions doesn't mean ignoring them. It doesn't mean suppressing how you feel or pretending you're fine when you're not. But strong people don't let their emotions control them. They don't let anger push them into decisions they'll regret. They don't let fear keep them from taking risks. They feel everything, but they respond instead of react. Think about the people who lose their temper over the smallest things. The ones who lash out, who hold grudges, who let their emotions drive their every move. That's not strength, that's a lack of control. And real strength, it's in the ability to take a step back, to breathe before responding, to know that just because you feel something deeply doesn't mean you have to act on it immediately. This is why strong people don't argue over nonsense. They don't waste time trying to prove a point when they know it won't change anything. They don't explode in anger when they could just walk away in peace. They understand that not every battle is worth fighting, and sometimes the greatest power you have is choosing not to engage. And that leads us to another sign of true strength, one that most people fear, but the strongest among us embrace: being comfortable in solitude. Weak people constantly need distractions. They need noise, validation, attention, anything to avoid being alone with their own thoughts. But strong people, they know the value of solitude. They aren't afraid of their own company. They don't need a crowd to feel complete. Have you ever noticed how many people can't even sit in silence for 5 minutes without reaching for their phone? Or how some jump from one relationship to another because they can't handle being alone? That's not strength, that's avoidance. Strong people understand that solitude isn't loneliness. It's in those quiet moments that you get to know yourself, that you reflect, recharge, and grow. They use that time to think, to work on themselves, to build something meaningful. And that's why they don't feel the need to constantly be surrounded by others. They choose quality over quantity in relationships. They'd rather have a few real connections than 100 surface-level friendships. So let's recap what we've covered so far. Strong people don't let hardships define them. They control their emotions instead of being controlled by them. And they're comfortable in their own company without needing constant validation from others. But we're not done yet. There are still 4 more signs that prove you're truly strong. And the next one, it's something most people get wrong about strength entirely. There's something most people misunderstand about strength. They think it's about always being right, always being the smartest in the room, always having the last word. But let me tell you the truth. One of the strongest things a person can do is admit when they're wrong. And that brings us to the next subtle sign of true strength: humility. See, weak people are obsessed with being right. They can't handle the idea of making a mistake. They'll argue, deflect, and shift blame just to protect their ego. But strong people, they don't need to do all that. They know their worth isn't tied to being perfect. They're secure enough to say, "I was wrong," without feeling like it makes them less of a person. Think about the people in your life. Who do you respect more? The one who stubbornly refuses to admit their mistakes, or the one who owns up to them and learns from them? Real strength isn't about never failing. It's about what you do after you fail. Do you get defensive or do you take responsibility? Do you ignore your flaws or do you work on them? The strongest people aren't the ones who pretend to have all the answers. They're the ones who are always willing to learn. And that leads us to the next sign of strength, one that separates those who thrive from those who struggle: adaptability. Life rarely goes as planned. You can have the best intentions, the most carefully thought out goals, and still something will come along and throw everything off course. And when that happens, you have two choices: resist it or adapt to it. Weak people fight change. They cling to the past. They try to force things to stay the same, even when it's clear they can't. But strong people, they move with life instead of against it. This doesn't mean they don't struggle with change. It just means they don't let that struggle paralyze them. They understand that uncertainty is part of life, and instead of fearing it, they embrace it. They adjust, they pivot, and they keep going, even when the path looks different from what they expect. It's like water. It doesn't try to force its way through obstacles. It flows around them. Strong people do the same. They're flexible. They know that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is let go of what you thought should happen and trust yourself to handle whatever comes next. And that brings us to one of the hardest but most powerful signs of true strength: the ability to forgive without forgetting. Let's be clear. Strong people do not let others walk all over them. They don't tolerate disrespect. They don't excuse harmful behavior. But they also don't carry unnecessary resentment. See, a lot of people think holding a grudge makes them strong, like it gives them power over the person who wronged them. But in reality, grudges are just chains that keep you tied to the past. And strong people, they refuse to stay stuck. Forgiving doesn't mean pretending something didn't happen. It doesn't mean allowing someone back into your life or giving them another chance to hurt you. It simply means you release the anger so it no longer controls you. You learn the lesson. You remember what it taught you, but you don't let it harden your heart. Weak people think forgiveness is weakness. But let me tell you, there is nothing easy about forgiving. It takes a kind of strength that most people don't have. To look at someone who hurt you and say, "You no longer have power over me," not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. So let's take a moment to reflect. The strongest people aren't the loudest, the toughest, or the ones who never struggle. They're the ones who are humble enough to admit when they're wrong, adaptable enough to handle life's changes, and wise enough to forgive without forgetting. Now, there's just one more sign left, one final, powerful trait that truly sets the strongest people apart. And this last one, it's the rarest of them all. Here's the thing. Most people think strength is about what you can endure, how much you can take before you break. But the strongest people, they aren't just survivors. They aren't just fighters. They have something even more powerful. They live life on their terms. And that's the last, and perhaps most important, sign of true strength. You define success for yourself. See, most people spend their whole lives chasing a version of success that was handed to them. Maybe it's money, maybe it's status, maybe it's approval from others. But truly strong people, they don't live by someone else's definition of success. They don't feel pressured to follow a path just because society says they should. They take a step back, look at what truly matters to them, and build a life around that. Think about it. How many people wake up one day, years down the road, and realize they've been living a life that never really belonged to them? They followed all the rules, did everything they were told would make them happy, and yet something feels missing. That's because strength isn't in following the crowd. It's in knowing yourself well enough to choose a path that actually fulfills you. And here's what makes this kind of strength so rare. It takes courage. It's easy to follow expectations. It's easy to do what everyone else is doing. What's hard is saying, "This isn't for me," and walking a different path. Strong people don't live for validation. They don't measure their success by other people's opinions. They find meaning in what truly matters to them, whether that's a quiet, simple life or something completely unconventional. They know that real success isn't about how much you have. It's about how you feel when you wake up in the morning. It's about peace. It's about purpose. And you know what? This kind of strength makes people uncomfortable. Because when you stop seeking approval, when you stop explaining yourself, when you stop living for anything other than what feels right to you, it makes people question their own choices. And not everyone is ready for that. But strong people don't shrink themselves to make others feel comfortable. They stay true to who they are, no matter who understands it. So let's look at the bigger picture. True strength isn't about how tough you appear on the outside. It's not about power, control, or forcing your way through life. It's in the small, quiet choices you make every day. The strength to walk away when something no longer serves you. The strength to let your actions speak louder than words. The strength to face hardships without letting them define you. The strength to control your emotions, to embrace solitude, to be humble, to adapt, to forgive, and most of all, to live life on your terms. If you see these signs in yourself, even in small ways, then you're far stronger than you might realize. And if you're still working on them, that's okay. Strength isn't something you're just born with. It's something you build. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Which of these signs do you see in yourself? And which one do you think you need to work on the most? Drop a comment below and let's talk about it. And if this video gave you something to think about, a like and subscribe would mean a lot. It lets me know that these kinds of conversations are meaningful to you too. Thank you for being here. Keep growing, keep learning, and most of all, keep walking your own path. I'll see you in the next one.